Other M is one of the few Wii games which attempts a more realistic look and succeeds with flying colours. Character models, particularly Samus, look great, as do the enemy and boss models, which are very nicely detailed. Environments generally look quite good. Of particular note is the tutorial room, which makes very nice use of reflections, if relatively uninspired. That is, you've just got your generic jungle, fire, ice, water and technological areas. I rarely notice jaggies, however some textures, such as the molten rock texture, look blurry, overblown and just lack detail. Particle effects, which you'll be seeing quite a lot of due to the diffusion beam, and explosions look nice enough, but they aren't really anything particularly special. Animations are very nicely handled, and every person and creature behaves and moves just as you would imagine, which gives the world of Other M a bit more of an organic feel. CG cutscenes, handled by Studio D Rockets, are incredible, and some of the best instances of story present within the game. The intro sequence is entirely CG, and is a spectacular reimagining of the final battle with Mother Brain at the end of Super Metroid. They are used throughout the game, however they correlate so nicely with the normal graphics that you'll barely notice the transition between CG and in-game. Another thing worth mentioning is that the transitions between the gameplay and cutscenes are brilliantly smooth. Whilst I did notice a few load screens whilst actually playing the game, usually when opening doors, not once did I suffer a load screen when entering a cutscene or in the midst of the story, not even when transitioning to a CG clip. A great example of the transition is from the beginning of the game. You're just guiding Samus down a corridor when you hear noises. The game smoothly shifts into first-person mode, just as if you'd point the remote at the screen, and bam, you're already in a cutscene. This effect melds the story, cutscenes and gameplay together very nicely. Now if only the story itself was better. Sound effects are all appropriate, and contribute strongly to the atmosphere of a bottle ship. The voice acting is a bit of a mixed bag. As I've stated, Samus' voice is fairly monotone and sounds bored most of the time, although she does have her moments, and the other characters are similarly hit and miss. Adam and Anthony were probably some of, if not the best voices in the game. Consequently, they are the only two other characters that I cared about. The only really terrible voices I remember are the guy that conducts the tutorial, and the Galactic Federation General. Their voices just sound out of sync and completely wrong for their characters. Actually, it can sometimes be difficult to hear what characters are saying over the top of the music and sound effects. There's no option to change the sound levels, and so it'd be nice if the dialogue wasn't overpowered by everything else. Subtitles shouldn't be mandatory. The music is basically non-existent. Unlike, well, every single other Metroid game in which we had great catchy tunes that remain some of the most memorable anthems in gaming, Other M sticks predominantly to beats and sounds to try and build up a tense atmosphere. That's not to say there isn't music, it's just brief and not very catchy. I think I remember about 5 short pieces of music, 3 of which are remixes of old tunes, and are once again a mixed bag. This fact really disappointed me. Music is one of the cornerstones of modern storytelling, and has always significantly added to the atmosphere of a Metroid universe, so the way in which it was handled in Other M just truly baffles me. Metroid Other M is a short game. The main story took me about 8 hours to complete, whilst the post-game content and item collection took me up to about 10.5 hours. Completing the game 100% unlocks an art gallery, which is nice, but you'll only ever look at it once, and a hard mode. Now the hard mode removes all expansions and ramps up the difficulty of the enemies, making the game much more in line with the higher difficulties of the Ninja Gaiden games. In other words, very, very hard. However, there is no bonus for playing through hard modes, so it's kind of frivolous. In the end, there's really no reason to revisit Other M. Metroid Other M is in no way, shape or form a bad game. It's got a unique control scheme which is easy to pick up and actually works. A great cinematic combat system and well-designed enemies and bosses to accompany it. Great graphics which push for Wii hardware and demonstrate that realistic graphics can be done well on the system, as well as some incredible CG cutscenes. And finally, some decent exploration. That said, it's also got its share of negatives. The story is subpar and poorly told, music is almost non-existent, exploration is limited and the game sometimes suffers from an overly linear progression, only one new power-up is introduced, textures are sometimes blurry and overblown, the voice acting ranges from bad to decent, and it's fairly short with little replayability. However, the core of the game, that is, its gameplay, is rock solid, and Other M is home to some incredibly cinematic and memorable gameplay sequences that every fan of action games should experience, eventually. Is Other M the Metroid game we were all hoping for? Absolutely not. Is it a good Metroid title? Well, that depends on what your concept of a Metroid game is. But no, probably not. Is it a great action game with elements of Metroid? Definitely. I give Metroid Other M 8 out of 10. Thanks for watching.